All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am so excited for our guest today because I have none other, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Noah Graff from Graff-Pinkert. Noah, welcome for joining us today.
Second time.
Good. Well, today we're going to be talking about unlocking better communication through curiosity and learning. And I forgot to get that out before I introduced you, Noah. I am sorry. How are things with you today?
Damon, before we go any further, you are so smooth. I have a podcast too, shameless self-promotion, Swarfcast.
Yep.
It's about our industry, and I am not live, and I have an editor, and usually at the very beginning like that's when we edit, because I'm just like, hey, welcome to the show. And you were like, you are like old school radio DJ. So because even though you forgot to say your original title of it, I mean, it was super sweet. You asked me how I am today.
Yes.
First, I'm really excited about doing this interview and talking about this new subject that people who know me, they know I talk about it all the time. But it also makes me a little nervous because I do go on podcasts, but I usually have like a different spiel I talk about. So this is good. It gets me a little out of my comfort zone, but it also, and it just shakes it up a little.
Yeah. So why are you nervous about talking about communication, man? I think you've
not nervous. I just I don't know. I'm not nervous. I think it's just gonna be a lot of fun, because it's always fun talking to you. I just interviewed Damon for my second time, and this is my second time on his show.
Yeah.
And he's fun to talk to. He's an amazing communicator, at least in my experience.
Thank you. Because that's not always been the case, and I'm still working on it. So today we're talking about unlocking better communication. Now, you sent me a video a while ago that I thought was awesome. I don't know if you've published that yet, if that's gone out to the world. I was looking at your videos and other things, and I haven't seen it.
It has not. Another self-promotion. So I am starting a new, maybe it'll be a podcast, but it's a YouTube channel. And I'm, and people listening to this, watching this, they'll know I'm just a big podcast junkie. It's not just making a podcast, but I listen to podcasts constantly, and I keep track of them. I often, will even like write down notes later of what I learned. And I feel like it's a lot of like books where people just speed through these audiobooks, and they don't really remember that many things, right? You ask somebody, what did you learn from a book? And they give you one concept, and that's it. And that's fine. But, when I listen to books, I like to listen to them, like find, good ones, and then just listen to them over and over again and make markers and stuff. And I use this app to listen to podcasts, which I totally recommend. It's called Snipped. And when you listen to podcasts, you can make markers on them. And, like when you hear, like this amazing point that Damon said on Swarfcast about, how to, up your business or whatever. And then later you can go back and look at it. So I'm into listening to a lot of podcasts and trying to remember what I learned on them. So I decided to come up with a new channel on YouTube about what I learned on a podcast. And believe it or not, like there's nothing like this. Like there's nothing like this in podcast land, in YouTube channel land. I was going to call it, I couldn't think of a good name for a while. I was going to call it the podcast show. As it was just a placeholder, but there was nothing even called the podcast show. It was but I figured out what I'm calling it. I love this. It's called I Learned It on a Podcast.
There you go.
So Damon saw the very first video I made for I Learned It on a Podcast, which is about something that I'm like totally into, about communicators. I talked about 3 different podcasts, and they were interviewing negotiators, and they were interviewing this amazing book that I'm going to talk about. This who wrote a book called Super Communicators. And now it's going away from my head who that was, but there's a book called Super Communicators.
Yeah, I had written it. Duhigg,
Charles Duhigg, who also he's written a lot of things like Power of Habit, and so I listened to this guy on a podcast, and I was just blown away. And I heard him on a whole bunch of other things, and listened to his book, and so I'll get to that. But anyways, that's kind of what Damon is going to be referencing here, because well,
let's tie this back to what you do, because I think you're in a constant state of negotiation in your business. Let's talk a little bit about your business. You've been in a long time business, I believe, started by your grandfather.
Started by my grandfather. It's called Graff-Pinkert. We are a used machinery dealer. Started in, I believe, 1944. No, 1940. No, 1939. So we're 80.
Wow.
Yeah, we're 85 years old. And so we buy and sell used machinery around the world. Specifically a certain kind of machine called a multi-spindle screw machine. These are really high volume machines for turn parts. They often go into like automotive or aerospace, medical, and they are, often we'll buy these machines. They may be from 1960s, and that, and they may be grimy, and we buy them and wash them off and make them look shiny and new. And often the old dirty machines you can actually make more money on than the shiny ones. I call them sexy ugly.
Ugly. There you go.
And I started about I don't know, 16, 17 years ago doing this. And I was a little so-so about going into this business. I was seeing an analyst, and I was telling him about what I did. And he knew also that I was a filmmaker, and I had told him about other things. And he goes, "You're a treasure hunter. You scour the earth looking for gold, black gold. And rather than just thinking of what you do as buying disgusting, gross screw machines and selling them for more money than you bought them for." He reframed it. He helped me reframe it. And so, when people ask me what I do, one of the things I often say is that I'm a treasure hunter. And when I talk to other dealers on the phone, they know me as, I'll always say, "Hey, you got any treasure? What treasure do you have for me lately?"
Yeah.
So as a machinery dealer, as somebody who's buying and selling things, I get to talk to people around the world constantly. A lot of characters, different cultures from, I was talking to a guy from India last week, a guy from Switzerland last week, and, a guy from Idaho last week, and it all makes it fun and interesting, and and you get. I'm, as I said, I'm a podcast junkie, and I like to listen to like personal development stuff and negotiation things, and how to talk to people stuff. And I feel like a lot of people are into that, but they aren't blessed like me with a chance to like go and just practice it. Like,
yes,
I can go and like hear something in the morning of like, here's something you could say to somebody, and then just go try it, or go try it in a podcast. And so, I'm able to like experiment and really learn about it and be a practitioner of it, because otherwise it's all really theoretical.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's cool having you talk about this. You talk about the new YouTube channel and what you're doing there, and watching the video, that's what I was thinking. And you're constantly, as you say, searching for treasure, talking to people, talking to some characters, and on both sides, you're trying to figure out what these. Yeah. But you're trying to figure out, though, in conversation, really what's important to these people in negotiation, in making deals, in understanding what they're really looking for. Both a buyer comes to you or somebody's selling, what's the most important to them when you're doing that. But as you're learning from the podcast about communication, what are some of the things that you've been able to, just little tidbits that you've been able to listen to and go, wow, that makes a huge difference? Just a couple.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about my, my game plan before this interview. How, I was thinking about sort of the metamorphosis of how I approach things.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in 2018, I always have to have some kind of project hanging over my head. And I decided I was going to, for an exercise, I was going to meet at least one new person every day. And I was going to document that, that person. And sometimes I'd meet like one person, sometimes I'd meet 10 people. I'd document it, and then I'd try to take a selfie with them. And I started considering like turning it into a book. Had, say, ChatGPT been around then, maybe it would have become a book. But I got really good at talking to a lot of people and getting out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and learned about all these fascinating people. It was a great experience. However, people asked me, so are you, do you talk to any of these people now? Did you keep in touch with any of them? Are you friends with any of them? Maybe one, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that. And why is that, right? And I think what it was that, yeah, they were cool conversations and they were good for the person talking, but it was kind of like a one-sided conversation. Like, everybody wants to be heard. People like to be listened to. When people are listened to, they feel like they're having a good conversation. And so that was great. But it was like, I would learn later that it could be taken up to another level, like the power of these conversations. And then, if people listen to me interviewed on podcasts and listen to my podcasts, one of the things I love to talk about, and I talk about serendipity. I interviewed a guy who was a serendipity expert on Swarfcast. I heard him first on a podcast, of course. His name is Christian Bush, and he wrote a book called The Serendipity Mindset, which is about all the things that people who seem to be in the right place at the right time, what they are doing in order to get lucky, right? Like, there's just certain people. Oh, well, yeah, I met Damon, and then he gave me a job, and then after that I learned about X, and then I made $1 zillion, etc. But other people, that just doesn't happen to.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things he talks about are the things you do in conversations, the things you say in conversations. Something like called a serendipity hook, which is where you introduce information about yourself. So for instance, if Damon was to ask me, we were to meet, and he said, what do you do? And I could say, well, I'm a machinery dealer. And then maybe he'd find that interesting, maybe he wouldn't. But I could say, well, I sell used machine tools. I like to call myself a treasure hunter, though. And but I'm also passionate about my podcast, and I make movies, and I have a 2-year-old child, so I can't go and go salsa dancing anymore. And all of a sudden you have like 5 things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could go on and talk about serendipity, but the point is, I got to this point where I realized there are things you say in a conversation to bring it to another level. It's not just about being a good listener. It's not just about being passive and letting people like to talk. And people, if you're making a documentary or something, it might be good to let them talk. However, also what I've realized, if you're doing an interview, and I'm sure you've realized this, there's a time to interrupt. There's a time to get said what you want to be said in the conversation, as opposed to, I'm just going to let them talk and let them give their spiel. And because it could be so much more. A conversation could be so much more than just, I got their story, and you didn't even necessarily get like the part of the story you wanted.
Yes. That's why I think what you're saying is so important, especially in the things like you're talking about in a negotiation setting, or where you're trying to do, like you are, searching for treasure and or selling that treasure to somebody else. Those conversations around business conversations are so important, because the whole negotiation, the getting to know somebody ahead of it, understanding them, is so key in the overall deal, that you can't just let one side or the other go all the way with the conversation without injecting what you need and helping it to move, so the listener gets to learn what they need to learn.
Exactly.
So they can get something done.
Exactly. Like if I'm going off on the wrong path right now, and you wanted to redirect it somewhere, like, yeah, you gotta be ready to step in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
steer this ship.
What's that?
I said, steer this ship right now.
Yes, exactly. That's what you got to do. And so, that when we hear a lot about communication, and we hear about listening, and that is a key part of and not just nodding your head and listening, but listening to understand. You hear it a lot, but man, I mean, I don't know about you, but as I get older, and you really understand when you keep your mouth shut, and when you ask another question and listen, and another question and listen, another question and listen, you'll uncover gold that you would have gone right past.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah. Right. But otherwise, if you don't direct it right, you may just be you got your shovel like in the total wrong place, and you want to direct the conversation somewhere else, etc. So I guess I'll talk about a few like things that I've been trying.
Yes. That'd be
experimenting with that are so cool. So yeah, I mean, one of the main things that I've really been into recently is this stuff from a book called Super Communicators. This guy, Charles Duhigg, he's not like a social psychologist. He's an author that writes cool ass books. Like he wrote The Power of Habit. He goes and he does research on these things. And so he researched for, I don't know, must have been years of how certain people communicate. And he brought up this story about how he had some issue and he wanted to tell, he wanted his wife to listen. And he started telling his wife about some problem. And then she started giving advice. And he was just like, no, like this is not what I need right now. And this thing happened the other day for me too. I gave this LinkedIn Live on StreamYard, the thing we're using, and it just went horrible in my opinion. I didn't know I didn't have a grasp of how to use the technology, and I was so angry. And I called my parents. I talked to my mom, who was watching, and obviously your mom's going to be really supportive, right? And
yeah.
And my mom was very supportive. She was really, felt bad for me and very encouraging of me. But she gives presentations online. She's experienced at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Mom, how bad was it? She's like, I don't know, maybe a C- or something. or and I was like, happy on the one hand that she's, she was like giving it to me straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then she started making suggestions, and I was like, no, I do not want suggestions right now. All I want is for you to hear me. And she was so great about it because she's a professional. She is an educational therapist for a living, and is an amazing super communicator. So one of the things that he talks about in this book is when you're going into a conversation, you want to ask about it before it starts. Do you want somebody to listen to you? Do you want somebody? He's got something he calls the 3 H's. Do you want to be helped? Do you want to be hugged? Or do you want to be heard? So if you're having a conversation with a loved one, sometimes like it just really helps. Like if somebody's going off, you say that to them, and then you can go about the conversation in the right way. It's just so many of these things. It's so simple. And
yes.
Because nobody is a mind reader.
And you think about it, it is a very simple question, and it is so effective to understand then what is my role in this conversation.
Yeah.
Because if you get it wrong, like with you and your mother's experience,
and my mom, and she may even be watching this, and I mean, she's like the greatest listener.
Oh yeah, yeah. But if you're listening with the wrong intention, unknowingly,
yeah,
it doesn't help the other person in the conversation as much.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about hearing those 3 things: the help, the hugs, or the hearing. If someone just want to be heard, it really can help you in a can make the conversation much better, because we know what's going on in this. He
talks a lot about it with doctors. It made a big difference with doctors, because people come, and sometimes they just don't want advice. They've got their data, you've got your data. There's no way you're going to even convince them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things they talk about in that book, about how various care changed. People, once a doctor understood that, they were able to actually get the patient to do what they really wanted to do. The patient had to feel like the doctor was hearing them.
Yes. Because I think that's it's so important, and it comes back again to as we know from many books. You even talked about it in your video that the main thing, the first thing that people really want to understand is you're actually listening.
Yeah. And so that's a big thing. You may be listening, but it doesn't necessarily feel like you're listening. So there's a few things you can do to make somebody feel like you're being listened to. One is there's this guy, Chris Voss. He wrote an amazing negotiation book that I love. It's called Never Split the Difference. And one thing he talks about is mirroring and labeling. So mirroring, you repeat the thing that the other person said right after they say it. And you try to do it in a way that's real subtle and they don't realize it. And then you do labeling, which is where you go, Damon, it seems like you really are interested in what I have to say. It seems like you know how to do a good podcast interview. Or you can do what's called false labeling, which you can use in negotiation too, which I might use that with my son right now who's sick and doesn't want to take his medicine. Oh, it seems like you want to go to the doctor. It seems like you don't care about this reward we're going to give you. It demonstrates that you are that you're listening to them when you say it seems like, it sounds like, or you mirror. And then another thing, you could take it further. So you can say somebody is say you're negotiating over a machine and you're going back and forth, and you can tell that they don't think things are fair. And fair is one of these words that I loathe. I hate the word fair. If anybody says it in the conversation, I just want to say, hey, no, you can't, this is bullshit. But anyways, you could say to somebody you don't think this is fair. And all of a sudden, they didn't even have to, you didn't even have to demonstrate you were listening to them. You already you told them what they knew before they said it. And if they don't think that it's fair, it's okay. You let them correct you. And if you let them correct you, then they really feel good because they know that you're paying attention to them and that you're caring what they say by you letting them, by you correcting them. And this stuff, it's hard. It's not easy to do it, but it's really, I get a charge out of the adventure of trying it.
Yes. And the thing that happens when you're negotiating for things that I've found in buying and selling businesses, it can be a pretty tense situation once in a while.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And when you're doing it and you continue to listen, and what you just said is so powerful. When the other person is not saying something, but you pick it up and you bring it out and you say, well, this doesn't seem like something you want to do. And is it that blah, blah, blah? They realize that you're actually listening beyond the conversation itself and trying to get deeper into what are the root things that we really need to cover in this conversation.
Yeah.
And like you said, it brings it out in the open, and they'll say, well, I really don't like X, or this doesn't matter to me. And you that's where you learn these golden nuggets and how you can go, there was no way to do this, to getting things done. That's what I love about the communication style that you're talking about today. You're talking about in videos is that understanding, better communication through curiosity and learning, to me, is really understanding the fundamental pieces that people care about. Like you said, in the conversation, what is the purpose of our conversation, and what are we trying to achieve here, and what matters?
Yeah. And I think if you, and even just starting the conversation by asking that, then the person's going to come in and go, okay, this guy really does care. Another thing that I've used.
Nice.
I'll tell you, sometimes I don't know. I feel like I'm just regurgitating this stuff because I've read it and listened to a podcast or whatever. But I guess because I'm a practitioner, I'm allowed to do it. And because I have a show now called, I learned it on a podcast. Mm-hmm. Anyways, derivative as it might be, there's this thing that Charles Duhigg says in the book, which is called a deep question. And this is where you ask people how it feels. Doesn't necessarily have to be said exactly that way, but you meet somebody and you start talking to them and they tell you what they do. And I'm not a fan of this whole, what do you do shit. I feel like it's sort of, I don't know. It's like you're evaluating the person, but a lot of people just say it because it's an icebreaker. So anyways, you're talking about what somebody does. And then you say, Damon, so how does it feel to help people sell their businesses? How does it feel to be a Mariner fan? To just, have to put up with mediocrity.
You had to constantly hit the second one.
And then maybe
stop it. Stop the video. Just so
and then, I'll tell you, like, it's incredible. I was talking to a guy about some machines they wanted us to sell on consignment, or they were discussing maybe having us sell on consignment. And, the whole thing was done. We asked how their deal was going. They were trying to buy a business. And if they were able to buy the business, they were wanting to, blah, blah, blah. The whole transactional part was done. And I said, so, you're buying all these different businesses right now. How is that feeling? Like, do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel, and it was totally genuine, because I'm always wondering when I'm talking to people who are, I just bought my 6th business in the last year. And I'm like, shit, I'm just trying to get to my to-do list. Right. Like,
yeah.
And it was cool. It just, I don't, will it make this conversation, will this conversation cause anything extra to happen? I don't know, but it continued, and he went in a different direction where, again, he felt like I was listening and I was caring a bit. And it wasn't just about, are we going to do this deal or not? And maybe he doesn't want to be my friend, but the idea of genuinely asking somebody how they're feeling with this thing that they're doing, it's really interesting. It changes things. And I can say recently, a few podcasts and a few just other conversations, I've had a few people afterward go, man, that's one of the best conversations I've had in a long time. You brought things out of me I hadn't told anybody in forever. And I was like, super communicators. Yes. And it's so cool. Like, it's I think, yeah, and I think it makes people like you if they feel like you genuinely care about them. And studies have shown that people trust those they like. And if they trust you, then hopefully they'll want to make more deals with you.
Well, and I also think too that
this is such a good conversation, by the way. Such a good idea.
I'm glad we're doing it. And I've got a question for you now, because this is for me personally. It's almost like the more I learn about people, and the more I learn about people, the more I want to learn about people. And you want to ask these questions and ask more of these questions, because at the end of the day, for me, the perspectives that you see and understand from this is wicked cool when you start to think about, professional life, the whole 9 yards, because the deep conversations and really understanding what, the people, what's going on in their head. I don't care if it's business, life, conversation, whatever. It's just so much fun to learn. And it's almost, and I don't even know if this is the right way to say it, but it's almost like intoxicating, because you want to learn more about somebody else or that person, and just continue understanding that, because it helps them and you in the end.
No, it's as you said, it's fantastic. It's just an amazing feeling.
So looking back on your communication, just go back a decade. What is a different way you approach conversation that's helped you, that really makes a difference in your daily life now, looking at your conversations and the way you communicate differently today?
Well, I mean, look, I think people have told me before, I've always naturally been a curious person. I've been a good question asker. I don't know, maybe it's genetic, or my son is an amazing question asker, and my wife, it's not genetic, fortunately, with her, but I mean, the only person I know who's a better question asker than me is her. I always come home from work with all these great stories, and then she's like, yeah, and what, do they have any kids? And what did they say next? And and I was like, I don't know. I don't remember that part of the, but like, I think it's part of what I was saying before about being passive versus being more active. I mean, when I was doing the Meeting People project, that was where I went a whole year meeting somebody new. I would literally I'd talk to people on the phone, and I would just like be taking notes and like get their life story, and it was great, and that was great practice. But yeah, just having intention in the conversation. And I think last 10 years, a lot of things, just mindfulness, as far as, approaching conversations to get the serendipity, or approaching things like this. These are things that we often know. We know to ask questions, but telling yourself, I have a long bedtime ritual, and a very tolerant wife.
That helps.
Oh my God. So I have these, I have a diary that I keep, like, my wins from the day, and I just talk about what happened that day. After the Meeting People project, like, I had realized how cool it was to document all these things that happened to me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to end this, which was really weird. It was weird to not have to meet a new person every day. But I ended it, and I was like, all right, well, I want to still feel like the day meant something. And at that point, I felt like it was important to do that. So I started writing a diary, and then now I have like lists. So I have a list of something I learned, a list of something serendipitous that happened that day,
Nice.
And so by writing these lists, if I'm writing something serendipitous that happened that day, then I'm always constantly thinking about it. I think I was going to start a super communication list and didn't want to add another list or something. So your question was, last 10 years, how I feel like I've approached conversations.
How you approach your communication differently.
Yeah. I'd say that's the case. I think I went through a period where I maybe I didn't feel good about talking about myself, about what I was doing, maybe felt self-conscious about it. And that also added the passivity. I was a really good question asker, because that would take even though, as you can see, I do like talking and I'm sort of into myself. I do feel like it was kind of my way of coping, which was to let's get their story.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry as much about talking about you. But I've never really been, I wouldn't call nobody would say that I'm like a shy person or an introverted person at all. But I, at the same time, still have times where it's hard to like jump into the pool and like,
yes,
even no matter how long I do it. I think, I don't know. I think some of these like people who work in sales who have to pay their dues by like making 100 phone calls a day or something, like maybe I didn't quite have to have it that bad. You know, I make more warm calls than cold calls.
Yeah.
I think that probably like really does like harden you. But maybe it hardens you, but maybe it's still like makes you a little nervous. I don't know.
Yeah.
I met a lot of new strangers and I still get, I like the next video for the show, the second one that's going to come out at the same time as the new one. One day it comes out next month. I was outside this week. The next video, it's about dogs and about
yes.
Yeah, you're a dog person, aren't you?
Oh yeah, 100% every day.
Yeah, see, I'm not a dog person. I'm not an animal person, but I'm not like anti-animal.
Yeah, yeah.
I think if somebody foisted a dog upon me and said, you're going to adopt this dog, I'd probably love it and learn to be a dog person, but I'm not. But anyways, it's based, this episode is about an awesome podcast where this guy in New York was wondering if his dog that lived with him in Manhattan would have been happier if it was in the suburbs, with more room and backyard. And so they interview this woman who's an expert. And so I was going around and I wanted to get B-roll for the video of just dogs around my area. And I still felt like I was thinking, all right, I'll just get some distant shots of people's dogs without asking them. And I still might do that, but I was just like, all right, I'm going to just do the right thing and say, hey, I'm making this documentary. Can I just shoot a little bit of your dog in there? And I was surprised. I got sort of rejected by two people.
They don't need to be in it. That's the thing. There's
too many dogs, right? I mean, one was just like, hey, I'm in a hurry and he's going to bark. That was definitely an excuse. And then the other guy was like, he's pooping, you can come back. And I was like, but the whole thing was awkward. But I guess where this is going is that I still felt very nervous about like going and asking these people if I could get B-roll of their dog. I wasn't even going to get B-roll of them, just their dog. Like, but I guess my point is, no matter how many people I talk to, no matter how many books or podcasts I listen to, like, it's still like, I still get uncomfortable.
And I think that, communication, that's
how about you?
Oh, yes. I'm a total introvert most of the time, right?
I mean, I always go on my morning walk. I'm always saying good morning to as many people as possible.
Oh, 100%. I do that when I walk. I smile like crazy. I say hello to everybody. It freaks people out. I mean, that to me is easy, but there's a lot of times, I mean, when I say introvert, there's a lot of times that I like to be by myself, even when I'm around people. I mean, you put me in a baseball game, I want to be there. I'm going to watch baseball.
You don't want to talk to the person next to you about the game?
Maybe if they know what they're talking about. But if it's somebody that's just like, doesn't know the game and they're just spouting off whatever, it's like annoying to me. But I'm just saying that's just me personally.
No, I know. But I love it when I can actually, particularly if maybe the person next to me may know more than the people that I came there with too. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't know, maybe I just love meeting people. I think the people usually I go to a baseball game with are good to talk to about the game.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice when I see like a diehard Cub fan next to me and we can talk about, like, you think they're going to bring this guy up? What do you think of this pitcher? Do you think they should have taken him out? You think leave him in?
It's all good, Dan. It's all good.
Tell you, man, let's totally deviate. You're totally into AI, right?
Yes.
And then the next video is going to be about this podcast I listened to about AI.
Yes, we got to do it because that would be fun. I tell you,
have you ever talked baseball to ChatGPT?
No, but I need to think about that.
It's so cool. I did it last week. Like, I wanted to know who, because the Cubs' best pitcher, Steele, he just got hurt and has to get Tommy John surgery. But I'm like excited about the people in the minors. They all, all the people want the Cubs to trade the Mariners for their ace. What's his name? Castillo?
Oh, Castillo. Yeah.
Why would they trade him? I don't know. But anyways, I'm all like, hey, chat, like, do you think that they're going to make a trade? Who do they have coming up? Like, is Cade Horton ready to come up? Oh, well, actually, they have this guy and this guy and this guy.
Oh, my goodness.
And you're like, really? Like, what's their record? What, and then they give you like all their stats and they're like, and so people are saying, well, maybe, maybe this guy's actually closer. And even though you haven't heard of him, he's a sleeper. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. And that is awesome. Cause I'm going to tell you that the other thing, and back to communication just quickly before we wrap up, I'll tell you that when you talk about AI, we go, okay, all these things it can do. One of the things that it really helps with is, you can research the topics, you can research the people, you can research other things when you're going into a conversation, if you really need to help you gain some perspective, gain some other things to talk about. That's very useful with it. And yes, the next one we need to do is about AI, because there is, I mean, I could go off. We go for another hour on this, and then go for another hour after that, another hour. Because
I'm just I'm just losing my virginity with AI, like the last 3 weeks.
My goodness. Well, we'll talk a little offline. Well, Noah, thank you so much for being here today. I love talking to you about topics, especially about communication, because people don't realize I've in the buying and selling of equipment like you're doing, you are communicating with people all day long, every day. And your skills and your attention to detail and intentional work on improving communication, I know it has to be helping.
I think so. Yeah. And it's really satisfying when you go, damn, look what I just did. I tried it, and that's what I recommend to people. Try it at home.
Yeah.
It like, get out of your comfort zone. Just do it for the hell of it. Like, cause why not? It's really like, when you all of a sudden you go, so how does that feel? Whatever. And then just observe it and you go, whoa, this is interesting. This is like a whole new thing in my arsenal.
Yes. Well, Noah, thanks for being here. I also wanted to real quick, we had some people that commented. Prince, thanks for being here today. He said, good day, guys. Just joined. Rosie stopped by. Good morning, everyone. Interesting topic. And then we had someone that we can't see who it is, but they said good morning as well. So thanks for listening around the world.
And so if people are interested in Graff-Pinkert for machines, graff-pinkert.com, or if they want to check out our podcast, we talk about Swarfcast. We talk about people in machinery, communication, serendipity. We interview cool people like Damon. So
it's awesome. Yeah. So you want to get on graff-pinkert.com. You want to get on the Swarfcast, SWARFCAST, to get on that. Well, I was just on it today, dude, looking at the different things. You guys have been around a long time. I mean, I won't get into it, but you guys have been blogging longer than many companies times 2.
It's true. Why aren't we getting as good of results as them? No, I mean, we do okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. Thanks
for being here today, Noah. Appreciate it always. I want to thank everybody that was listening as well for spending your time with us. Appreciate you. Even if you didn't drop the comments, I can see you're there on X. I can see you're there on the other platforms. Thanks for joining us today. If you got in late, go back to the beginning. Noah and I talked about some incredible points on helping to improve your communication, some of the books that the podcasts he's been listening to, books that have been helping him with some different ideas. Get back to that. We'll be back again later. Thanks, everyone. Noah, hang out. We'll finish up offline.